Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and with me, as usual, is Adam. And we are getting back together after the regular season has ended, and we are geared up now for bowl season. But first, we've got big news to cover today, talking about AJ Dybantsa officially committing to BYU. So we're going to get all into that, the bowl games, picks, the playoff. But before we do, please make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and you can catch all of our content. We are still very much focused on football, but starting to ramp up basketball as well as we get more into basketball season and as conference play is about to start. So we're really excited for all of that. So Adam, we got to discuss the big news about AJ Dybantsa. We were both watching First Take, and we were texting a little bit during that. But I don't know. Let me know. What are your thoughts now that you've had a couple days to think about it, and how are you feeling?
There are no superlatives. I mean, it is outstretched the English language ability to describe what just occurred for BYU sports. You can call it an earthquake. You can call it a new era. You can call it whatever you want. It is it's incredible. And the more I read about it, and the more I read about how it happened, the more amazed I am that it's happened. That someone of that caliber is looking at BYU, and we are now playing in those leagues. We have now staked our claim to what will be the future of BYU basketball. Now, a lot of things need to continue to go right. AJ's got to have a successful year, right? You come in and you struggle. Now you're not the number one pick or injury or whatever it is. High risk, high reward. But in all likelihood, this has staked a new trajectory for BYU basketball, and puts us in the conversation to say, can we make a deep run into the tournament in future years? Absolutely. Are we going to break that Final Four curse as the team with the most NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four appearance? Yeah. At some point, we're going to do that under Kevin Young. All signs point to him here long term, and he has revolutionized what it is to be BYU basketball. Completely revolutionized with this moment. So very cool. Dybantsa seems like an incredible guy, high character, high academic performance, things that people don't talk about because they want to talk about the NIL money and his jaw-dropping on-court performance. But man, it's going to be a pretty cool season next year.
Very cool. So let's talk about the money real quick, because I've seen a lot of different things about how much it really is. Some of the numbers are saying, no, that's including, deals like Red Bull or whatever that he has. I've seen other things that are saying, no, it wasn't 7 million. It was more like 5 million. For me, it doesn't really matter. If it was 7 million, I think it was worth it. That look on Stephen A's face was worth 7 million right there when he made the announcement. And but no, I mean, I've heard from a number of sources, or I've read, I guess, from a number of sources on social media and things that all the finalists, all those programs were willing to meet the same number. They were all in the same space. So it wasn't just BYU outbidding, but there was something there that that he liked about Kevin Young and BYU in the program. And from all accounts, it really helped the early visit. And I read, one of the things that we were surprised to find out is that he had signed at the end of the early signing period, and they had been able to keep that under wraps, which is huge that they were able to keep that. Can you imagine, letting that leak and then like him souring, and then later, changing his mind or whatever, like the fact that they kept that under wraps. But what was cool is I saw that come out from Robbie McCombs on Vanquish the Foe, the first, and now you've seen it on more mainstream sources, but that was the first place I saw that. And that to me is huge news. But something that stood out to me in that is it was talking about his parents made kind of a surprise, whatever, visit when Kevin Young was a new hire. He was still with the Suns, and they went, and he wasn't planning on being on campus, and he stopped everything and flew and got to Provo. And to me, that stood out a lot because it would have been so easy. Nobody would have blamed him and said, hey, I'm wrapping things up here. I can't make it. I've got all, my assistant coaches, my staff are there. I'll Zoom with you real quick, while you're there or whatever, and we'll talk. But I just can't physically be there right now. I don't think anyone would have blamed him, but I think the fact that he made that effort and he was there may have been one of the first things that really helped start solidifying BYU as a front runner. I don't know that for a fact, but just, kind of reading between the lines and getting a sense of, what a big step that was. Because I mean, look, you're telling your wife, hey, I know we're super busy right now, I got this new job, I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm not around, and you're expecting me here for this, and I'm not going to be, I'm going, just so many, there would have been so many excuses not to show up, and yet he did. And so I think that was huge. And so at the end of the day, I think it really did come down to more than money. Now, did the money play a part? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody would be foolish not to take that seriously. That kind of money that just really change, generational wealth that will impact your family for a long time. So obviously, money was a deal, was part of the deal, but there was more there to BYU. So I think that's huge. Really impressed with what Kevin Young has been doing. I've seen some people saying, "Oh yeah, Yegor, he's got to come back one more season." What do you think the likelihood of that happening is?
Next to none. Next to none.
That's what I would say.
He came to prep for the NBA. He's going to the NBA.
Right.
You already heard Richie Saunders talk about, oh man, I can't wait to play with that guy next year. And so I think a lot of the players are thinking along those lines. But when it comes down to Yegor Demon and probably Cannon Catchings, man, you went there to prep to go to the NBA to prove the concept, and you almost have to have that. I think BYU needs to have that high lottery draft pick that Yegor Demon will be to really solidify the program going into Dybantsa's year at BYU. You got to show that's what you're touting the program on, is we can build NBA ready young men. That's the whole mantra now of KYU is that's what you're going to create. And so you've got to deliver that. And I think having Yegor move on and be a lottery pick would be huge for the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, and I don't think he should, and I don't think he will stay back. But can you imagine BYU back-to-back years having a top 5 pick, and number 1 overall pick,
Yeah.
and Catchings too? Like, if he's a first-round pick, I think he's gone. Now, if he sees his draft stock slide a little bit, then there's a chance maybe he comes back to boost that again. But I don't think he's staying to play with AJ for that alone.
Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate goal is to get to the NBA. So if that path is there, I think people take that. There's plenty of time to play with and against AJ in the NBA.
In the league. Yeah, exactly.
But also, I think he and AJ may be put into similar roles or a similar position on the team anyway. So I don't know. Anyway, that's beside the point. So yeah, huge news. For me though, joking aside about the just paying that much money just to see the look on Stephen A's face, but that money really, whatever it ended up being, however many millions, I think is worth it for the program for all those reasons you said. Is just the impact that it'll have every time they talk about AJ, in the NBA and where he played in school and whatever. It's always going to be tied to BYU, and that legacy is always going to go back. I mean, you think about Steve Young and how he's talked about and how BYU's brought up with him forever. I mean, you have that kind of potential with AJ, and also just changing the trajectory for this program right away. With as we mentioned, the back-to-back years with top 5 draft picks. Now AJ, it really feels like he's got to be the number 1 overall, or it might be kind of seen as a failure a little bit. But and you said this too. Now BYU has to go and have the on-court success. Obviously, this year you want to see improvement over what you did last year. It's not really Final Four or bust, but how far do you think they have to go with AJ? What kind of success do they have to have next year for it to be viewed as a successful season, apart from him just getting the number 1 pick?
Yeah, and so much is put on the NCAA tournament, and I don't think that is big. But I mean, you look at I think I read a stat where the last 3 number 1 ranked recruits overall came in, or excuse me, 3 out of the last 9 number 1 ranked recruits came in and didn't even make it to the NCAA tournament. Still went on and got drafted. And so to have a successful year with someone like Dybantsa and the team you can build around him, right? That you have now, Xavier Stanton's coming in. You're probably going to draw more recruits now that you've got AJ there. I think you've got to get Sweet 16, Elite 8 to call it successful. I look more at the regular season. If you end up middle of the pack, fourth or fifth in the Big 12, an 8 seed, a 7 seed, a 5 seed, maybe it wasn't quite as successful as you hoped. If you get in there and you get a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and you win those first couple games like you're expected to, and then you move into Sweet 16, Elite 8, and you go against some tough teams, and maybe lose there. To me, I know expectations are going to be sky high because Dybantsa is going to walk in and say natty or bust, right? That's basically what he said, and so that's what the fan base is going to be thinking. But realistically, Kevin Young's a second-year coach. We're going to see how he develops as a head coach. You got to see what role pieces are around Dybantsa that year, and how they play. How healthy are you later on in the year? Can you stay healthy? Are you a deep team? All those things play into it. It's not just that you have generational talent, absolutely, but he's not going to win it on his own. There's so many things that have to go right. So I see it as top 3 seed, vying for, if not in the Big 12 championship game, right? You got to be one of those top 1 or 2, maybe 3 teams in the Big 12 to call it a successful season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there. So now talking about how to have a successful season, you need more than one guy. Now, obviously in basketball, as opposed to football, one guy can have a greater impact because you're one of 5, but just having him alone is huge. And you got some core pieces. You mentioned Richie, some of the others talking about wanting to play with him. How much easier is it going to be to recruit your own guys, but also bring in new guys? Now that people see AJ's going there, are other guys going to follow along? I mean, we've already seen Xavion. I don't know how closely that was tied with AJ, but and now there's some talk of some other guys potentially being interested in BYU. How many more guys do you think he's going to be able to pull along with him?
I think you get at least 2 major recruits out of this. I don't know who it is. I'm not well plugged in enough, but you got to imagine a couple more guys want to come and play with him. Now others are gonna say the opposite. Say, I want to be the guy. I don't want to go there. He's going to be featured in the offense. I want to be featured in the offense. I want to blaze my own trail. So it will be a deterrent to others who have a different mindset. But if you're talking about out of the top 20 recruits, out of the top 30 or 40 recruits, there's going to be a couple guys in there who are like, yeah, that system fits what I have. I'm a piece that they need, right? A big power forward to complement Staten and Dybantsa. BYU is pretty deep at point guard right now with Hall and Crawford, but you could see another piece like that. So that's what you're going to look at is how does my game complement their game? And so if Dybantsa is small forward shooting guard, you probably want one other 6'8", 6'9" big wing player. I know BYU doesn't play the traditional 5 positions. They're mostly just looking for length and athleticism and guys who can play multiple roles. But I think that's how they think is how does my game fit next to his game? And can I get in there and play? Because you think about how many NBA scouts will be at every game for BYU. How many nationally televised matchups will they get in the biggest tournaments now because of Dybantsa? And so people are going to ride those coattails and say, oh, I think I'm good enough to be a lottery pick, and they've only got me as the 25th overall recruit. I want to go there and prove who I am. So I think obviously what Kevin Young is selling is really, really resonating with young men and their families. And we're still in the middle of this recruiting cycle for 2025. I think you're going to see some big names come BYU's way.
Yeah, better get your HBO Max subscription renewed or whatever, so you can catch all those games. Because they are going to be featured on a lot of primetime TV slots. So, all right, so let's put a bow on this and move on. There will be lots of time to talk about basketball and as we get into to the season. But now let's focus on go back to football. The end of the season. We've already talked about what a great season for BYU, but disappointing finish. Now we know the bowl game. They're going to be playing conference foe Colorado. How are you feeling about that?
So I don't love that it's a conference foe, but to me, because it's Colorado, that's somewhat diminished. That's a fun matchup. That's a big time matchup. A lot of eyeballs on Colorado, so fun to play in that matchup. If we were playing, Iowa State, I probably wouldn't be as excited about it. Colorado's brand new to the conference. They're in the bowl game because of the former Pac-12 tie-in, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we didn't play Colorado this year. So all of that being said, I'm okay with it in a unique circumstance. Typically, I'd be pretty set against it. but I love that it's Colorado. I love the matchup there. Their passing game against our pass defense. There's some great storylines. We get to go up against Travis Hunter, which is awesome, and see how we stack up against some of the most athletic players in the country. And the Alamo Bowl is huge. That's the biggest bowl we played in since 1996. Primetime matchup post Christmas. So there's a lot to be really excited about this matchup. Obviously, everybody wants to be in the Big 12 championship game, or you want to be in the playoff. And certainly our play merited being in that conversation. It didn't happen. But you step back and you look at the season as a whole. This is pretty cool stuff to be playing in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado that late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the top bowl games outside of the NY6 or the playoff games now or whatever. One of the top bowl games there. So that's awesome and great. And that's one of the good things is even when you have a season where you don't, make it, as far as you want, like this is BYU not achieving their goal is still ending up in a bowl game that is far better than anything they played in Independence.
Yeah, exactly. We went 10-2 in what was it, 2021, or 10-3 that year. We weren't playing in the Alamo Bowl. was that the New Mexico Bowl, or maybe that was the next year? Anyway,
I think so. And then 2020 with the one loss, and we end up in Shreveport.
In Boca Raton.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So I mean, it's to play in the Alamo Bowl after that season, you just see the contrast, the difference between Independence and Big 12 play, which just hugely elevates the profile of the program and gives you opportunities in future years because you're not having an historic season and ending up in Boca Raton.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on. It's a bummer we're playing a conference foe now. It's not a team that we played this season, and actually haven't played Colorado for a very long time. So it's still kind of a new matchup, even though I believe we play them next year, right? So, but
sure we will.
It's not great for the conference but we knew this going into the season already. This was already determined that it was going to be set up this way. So we knew this, but it kind of sucks for the conference because then instead of having two more statements to go make against other conferences, now you're just playing each other. And it's two top teams too. And so one of them is going to take a hit in the polls too. And these are, higher ranked teams for the conference. So that's not great. Another thing though, the Alamo Bowl had its selection of teams. Colorado was pretty much a given that they were going to take them from the Pac-12 teams because they were the only one because ASU was in the playoff and the other two were not bowl eligible. So it was basically Colorado was locked into that. And then it was basically going to be between BYU and ISU to get into the Alamo Bowl. And so they chose BYU. So that's a compliment, although I would have loved to have been playing Miami instead and make a statement there, especially with similar resumes and being kind of compared and talked about all season and jockeying back and forth. But as you mentioned, playing Colorado, that's a huge game, going to get lots of eyeballs and a lot of attention because of Prime, because of Travis Hunter and all that goes along with Colorado. So that'll be a lot of fun. And it should be a good game. I'm also bummed because flights to San Antonio are way more expensive than flights to Orlando, especially this time of year. So, that's not happening for me. But so there's some downside, but some upside too. So it'll be cool. And I don't know. It is what it is at this point, and I think we'll make the most of it. And
I think there's a lot of positives to draw from it, just like the season. Tons of positives to draw from it. Miles and miles beyond what we expected when the season started, and short of what we hoped for mid-season. So, you kind of take of it what it is, but I think at the end of the day, pretty darn cool to be playing in the Alamo Bowl. Pretty awesome to be playing Colorado, and a lot of great things I think going into this year in matchup. And man, last year we were on the sidelines during bowl season, and that was awful. That's the worst. At the end of a season, feeling like you really came up short like that. And so I'd rather be short of the playoff and playing in the Alamo Bowl than where we were at last year. And it'll be fun matchup against Colorado.
Okay, I want to switch in and look at our picks, but before I do want to hit on transfer portal stuff that's gone on so far. So BYU, we've only had a few guys leave so far. Some guys which have been around for a while. You got Micah Harper and shoot, help me out. Who are
Cody
some of the
Epps.
others? Well, Cody
Cody,
Epps, again, right? And these
yeah,
are guys who we've seen their production kind of slip, and I think they're like, I've got one more year of eligibility. It makes sense. They want to
yeah.
go and they want to play, and I want them to play, and I want the best for them. These are dudes that I remember them having really big moments, and so it's sad to see them go, but I get it. I want the best for them. The really shocking one was Crew Wakely, and I don't know if this is just a power play, a positioning, if there's a chance he comes back, or if he's gone. Because if he goes, that hurts because he is good.
He is good, but to me, I'm not as stressed about that one because we're so overloaded at the strong safety position. I mean, we couldn't find one that was consistent. It was Raider Demooney, it was Tommy Prasis, it was Crew Wakely, it was and Hill kept saying he was waiting for the next person to sort of emerge from that. And you've got two dynamic freshmen in Prasis and Satuala, and then you got Raider Demooney, and these are 4-star guys who are 3 or 4-star guys who are really competing for time. Crew Wakely was an awesome story. Comes in as a walk on, ends up in a starting role, plays really really well. I'm trying to think about you got there. Tanner Wall at free safety. So the safety room is loaded. And while I'm disappointed to see him go, I'm not super surprised, and I'm okay with it given of all the areas where we could afford to lose someone, it's probably safety or wide receiver because we have such depth there.
Mhm.
The one that surprises me a little bit is Jackson Bowers, just
Yeah.
because you're losing your entire tight end room. Swanson's going on a mission. Taase graduates. Hill graduates. Um, who else was there? I think Ethan Erickson is graduating. So he is the guy. Bowers is the guy now, and you wonder if that's a Jacob Conover situation where this coaching staff sits down and just says, "Hey, trying to be frank with you, whatever it was that they were seeing in practice wasn't translating to the field, and he wasn't able to get on the field." Everybody was shocked when Conover transferred and thought, "What's going on? The sky's falling." And uh, and then at the end of the day, Conover he has been able to crack the starting role in anywhere, right? And so I kind of wonder. Sometimes guys get 4-star uh, attributes, but not 4-star play, and it's either that or he's frustrated with something and couldn't get on the field. And even though he's going to start next year, he's out. But our tight end room really needs help now because of that. But outside of that, I'm with you. I think the transfers are guys where you just say, man, they couldn't get back on the field. Micah Harper, another safety, couldn't get on the field. I don't know if he ever really came back from his ACL injury. This guy was all Big 12 before his second ACL, and so maybe he couldn't get back. Cody Epps has had the injury bug, and just guys you love watching. But I agree. I want him to play. I want him to have a successful last season, and the transfer portal departures for BYU so far have not been concerning yet. We'll see what happens.
And relatively low at this point, which is good. And maybe it's because you got a big meaningful, not meaningful, but a big bowl game ahead of
Yeah.
you, playing up against some good competition. So maybe that's kept some guys in. But yeah, so far I think with the success you have, it's going to really help keep a lot, re-recruit your existing players.
Well, to me, that was the most innovative thing BYU did last year. Is after a bad year, they came back and they said, "We are recruiting our team," and they had very few transfers for a 5-7 team. You usually see guys jumping ship left and right, and they had almost no one leave the team last year. And everybody's kind of scratching their heads, like, "Well, why do you want that crew back? They went 5-7. Don't you need to increase your roster? They don't take in many transfers." That we've talked through that storyline already, and then had a great season. So I think BYU is ahead of their time in this and saying, we are recruiting our guys to stay. And they do such a good job of that, creating continuity year to year. And it's working for them that they're overperforming based on the personnel they have. And so I would expect this from BYU year over year to not lose a lot of guys to transfer because it's a priority for them. They do a great job at it.
Yeah. Having said that, there are a lot of position groups that really need some bolstering. Debatable wide receiver. I still think if Roberts goes, that I still think we probably need to bring in another guy there. Our O line, our D line. I don't know. There's several spots that could still use some guys, and so we are going to have to go to the portal. And again, I can't keep track of all the guys that are coming in off missions, although they don't usually
Nah,
play a lot the
they need
first
another year to get rid of mission legs.
or freshmen too. So again, I think you're going to have to rely on some transfers to bolster that. The good news is there's a school nearby that has a lot of guys going into the portal that all have ties to BYU or were recruited by BYU before. So there's a chance that to pick up a few guys there.
Yeah, Isaac Wilson, anybody?
Yeah, what would you think about Isaac Wilson coming?
Somewhat mixed. I'd be happy if he came. I mean, talented guy, and certainly has a lot of potential. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come to BYU. It obviously feels like he made a bad choice going to Utah. I thought he'd stick around and just see what Jason Beck had to offer. That's a huge hire for Utah and terrifying for me. I love Jason Beck. Loved watching the New Mexico games this year. He is as talented as they come, and if you pair a good offense with Utah, look out. They will always be stout defensively. And so for me, that's a terrifying hire. I would think Isaac Wilson would at least want to hear the pitch. And maybe he is, right? He's in the transfer portal. He can always go back to Utah. He's keeping his options open. But if BYU were to bring him in, I'd be happy with that. McKay Hillstead is kind of the future right now, unless Bourget or one of our other quarterbacks really steps up. I'm trying to think who our freshman is there that we brought in from Texas. But anyway, we've got some guys. Nobody's really stood out as the number 2 behind Retzloff. And Isaac Wilson could be that guy. He could come in. He's had some D1 snaps. He's taken his lumps. He's learned a lot. So I'd like to see him come in and compete with McKay Hillstead and see who wins. McKay Hillstead has talent, all over the place. But I worry about his size at 5'10" and 180 pounds soaking wet. I don't know how durable he can be at the D1 level. But he's kind of our second right now, and that I'd like to see Isaac Wilson in that role.
Well, I saw one tweet that said, "Hey, Ryder Burton, if your dream is to play in the NBA, BYU is the school for you." So trying to recruit him, but so that could always happen. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. Exactly where he falls in or fits in, but if he chooses BYU, I think that's great. There are some, like I said, there's probably some higher priority guys out there for BYU, but yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see all that play out. All right, let's move into our picks here. We actually haven't discussed since, let me pull this up, week 13. And so this is how it went. So it just got worse for me. I just got even further behind you. So I don't really need to get into that too much. And then this was our pick. So we got it kind of last minute, and I didn't open up your email because I didn't want to bias my picks. And I didn't realize until too late that you hadn't done some of these smaller conferences.
Yeah. I should respect smaller conferences a little bit more and make sure I get my picks in there.
It's all right.
You can count those as losses.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I might, on a test.
That's a forfeit.
Right? If you leave a blank. So that might actually help me out just a tad. I think I'm still behind, but I'll take it. But yeah, so at least I did better than Jeff here, who came in and did these with me. So there's that. So I haven't even done a tally yet. So nor did I even put animations on this slide here. So we just got them all. That's the kind of day it is. But so here's our bowl picks.
Remarkably similar.
Yeah. A little too similar. So not too much excitement. Also, not a lot of room for me to close in on you. So we'll have to use our overall bowl picks, which you actually sent me. So we can actually maybe there I can pull up the upset in the postseason. But yeah, I don't know. West Virginia got a kind of a tough draw, which is funny because it's against it's a bummer. It's one of those lose because if you win, it's like, yeah, but you're playing a G5 school. But if you lose,
it's funny because we were in this position for so many years. And it's funny to be on the other side of this now and be in a P4 conference and look at this, because when we were in the Mountain West and you play these games, you go to the Las Vegas Bowl and you get a team like Oregon who has national championship aspirations or Pac-12 championship aspirations at the beginning of the year. They underperform and now they're in the Las Vegas Bowl and they're like, oh, well, now we got to play so-and-so. Well, we're like, oh, whoa, what are you scared to play us? We're coming off of our Mountain West Conference championship. And so it's tough now for these P4 teams. You got West Virginia, who's really chronically underperformed this year. They're at 6-6, barely bowl eligible. They're probably going to get dump trucked by a pretty good Memphis team. And
Rich
feel
Rod
for him.
Come in and coach for the bowl game.
He should. He should jump in right away. And that'll be an interesting. I love that he's back in the Big 12. I do. I've always been a fan of Rich Rod's offense. I think I saw some of the West Virginia fans saying the guy got canned from his last two major roles. He's 17 years past his prime. Let's not get too excited. And I see that. I see that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I could certainly see why the fans feel that way. But I'll be watching West Virginia closely to see if they can regain some of that shine. But they won't have it for Memphis. I feel for him there.
Yeah, my thing about Rich Rod. So growing up in Michigan, I'm a Michigan fan, and he was hired when I was really probably at the height of my Michigan fandom, I guess, where I still cared more about Michigan football, I guess. And he comes in, well, it was always equal Michigan, BYU, but then going off to school, changed that, and I kind of forgot about Michigan. But he was hired, and he just came in, and he just wanted to run his system his way. And you got Ryan Mallett running the spread offense, which it just wasn't a good fit. And I put that on Rich Rod. I almost said A-Rod. It's A-Rod's fault. It's always A-Rod's fault.
You're a BYU fan, so it better be A-Rod's fault.
But no, so that always bugged me. And I thought he was a weird hire for Michigan at the time anyway. It didn't really fit. Then they brought in Brady Hoke, and he was an example of, hey, I want to play a different way, but these are the guys I have. And we saw what he did with Shoelace, and it just, I think he did a much better job in working with the pieces that he had. Anyway, so that's kind of my feelings on Rich Rod, but you're probably right. He may be past his prime, but it should be interesting. And actually, actually, I wanted to get your opinion. We had since there's two schools in the conference that have picked up, gone back to the glory days of head coach hiring, with UCF hiring Scott Frost, both trying to get back to where they were. I was just kind of curious, which of all the head coaches in the Big 12, for each team in the Big 12, which one do you think would be the most awkward rehire for each program across the Big 12?
That is a tough question. There's some really awkward ones. Baylor, for obvious reasons, I think tops that list. Herm Edwards, the way it ended there.
Twice. I have him for Houston too, even though the allegations weren't for Houston. I think having him anywhere near any college program would be awkward.
Yeah, that would be awkward. Was that Charlie Weiss at Kansas?
Man, you're put Les Miles on this list twice,
and Les Miles too, man. That's you're really hearkening back to some classic days there. Is that Urban Meyer? Oh man, you got some good ones here. It's hard to say who would be the most awkward rehire.
The Utah, with Whit being there for so long, there weren't many people to pull. So I figured, Urban Meyer, and I used this picture in particular for a reason. But I thought Arizona, this would be extremely awkward too soon. Back to Patterson. Actually, that might not be that awkward. They might be happy about that.
I think they would be happy about that still. Herm Edwards was just awkward the way it ended. So I don't know. Cliff Kingsbury, I could see that actually. The way his career's gone post Texas Tech, I could see that one day. I don't think that would be too awkward.
The only other coach that Kansas State has ever had, I'm pretty sure. So
I think so. I think they're busy building the statue for him.
Come in for the third stint. Bronco, Gary Croton maybe would be more weird, but I think there's a lot of mixed feelings with Bronco. That's why I put him on there.
There are a lot of mixed feelings with Bronco. He's not going to come back to BYU because of his preference. There's a deep divide in the fan base about Bronco. I am firmly on the Bronco side.
Me too.
Big Bronco Mendenhall fan, and would love it if he came back to the program. It'll never happen. I think it was taxing on him, just the way the fan base was so divided, and how difficult it was on him and his family at times. Being in that position, the Utah State move to me is baffling. When his name surfaced, I kept telling everybody, "There's no way." He just committed to New Mexico. That's not his style, and I still don't know why he did it. To be honest, it'll be interesting to see that play out.
The Utah State, it doesn't make sense to me. It's
Yeah.
really weird. If
It,
he thought it was, the mixed reaction he was getting from BYU fans was hard on him. I mean, Utah State. I talked to Utah State fans that are like, "We're not happy about this," and I was like,
they didn't
"We're not
love
happy
Bronco when
about
he was at
this.
BYU.
Potentially the best team that Utah State's had, and maybe ever. Because that's the thing is maybe his teams have a high ceiling. Part of it's the types of programs that he goes to that you're always going to kind of tap out on certain types of recruits, max out. But he has a very high floor. He's going to get the most out of the guys that come play for him. So, I think that helps. And then going into this new weird Pac-12, I think they're going to be able to be competitive, and it'll be interesting. But it's weird that he's in New Mexico for 1 year and just like, no, I'm going to bounce for Utah State. I don't know. It's just weird.
If I had one choice out of all your coaching candidates here, it's got to be Charlie Weiss, just because of that picture, man. I love that he was sitting on his couch collecting like what, $8 million a year and from 3 different schools after he got fired from Notre Dame and Kansas, and I thought one other. And oh man, he was unfortunately didn't work out as a head coach anywhere. Great offensive mind, but would love to see him make the round again. That was exciting times.
Yes, indeed. So, anyway, I just thought that was funny. If all the Big 12 schools were to bring back people, because Rich Rod's probably not the most awkward. It'd probably be, I don't know. Actually, maybe it would be Scott Frost. I think they're excited to have him back. So anyway,
he'll do well there.
The rest of these, K-State gets kind of a bummer. Not a very exciting matchup with Rutgers. Arkansas, Texas Tech better beat them because of all the trash talking we've done with Oklahoma State beating Arkansas and trash in the SEC.
And I can't believe Arkansas is bowl eligible. I'm shocked. I mean, what does that say about the SEC this year? That Arkansas became bowl eligible in that conference after losing to Oklahoma State and some other bad losses. I mean, anyway, Texas Tech better win that one. They better win.
And TCU's super bum, New Mexico Bowl.
They got to show out there.
Raging Cajuns, good team, played for their conference championship, but I mean, still not what you want to be. Iowa State gets the bowl game I think most BYU fans wanted, and the matchup there. Miami, I think, is a little bit overrated. They won some games that were questionable and things, but a Heisman hopeful, a Heisman quality type player at QB should be exciting. I just don't know if Iowa State has it.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I'd love it if they would, but I've still never bought into Iowa State. That's why I thought Kansas State would beat them the last week of the season. I think Iowa State's very good, historically good for Iowa State, but I didn't think they quite had that edge. Mm-hmm. I think that was a big miss by Kansas State. They flopped this season, and I would love to see Iowa State win this. But I agree. I think Miami's got it.
And that's my worry about K-State. Are they going to have a letdown after that disappointing loss and then go play Rutgers and not be excited? Because a lot of times in bowl season, it's about who's more excited to be there.
Absolutely. Who retains their players, not transferring? What's your attitude going to the bowl game? Are you willing to practice and really grind leading up to the game? I worry about BYU in that sense, where we've stumbled the last 2 out of the last 3 games. We were obviously disappointed during the Houston game, and we haven't performed top to our level since the UCF game. And you're going to get a Colorado team that's talented and some of their major pieces playing in their last game. So I don't know. I don't know if BYU's got the discipline to prepare well enough to win that game. I certainly hope so.
We thought they did at the beginning of the year, but now it's questionable. So I'm picking BYU because I think they're in every game. I don't think there's many teams where I think they're completely outmatched by. If they're playing well, it's just a question of whether they come in and play to their potential.
Yep.
And then Baylor, this is actually kind of for a team that, struggled for a lot of the year, got kind of a sneaky fun bowl game against LSU, who also kind of underperformed. But again, I have a lot of confidence in Baylor. I mean, they shut down a super red hot Kansas team after they just burned through the whole Big 12. And then they went and ruined the chance of getting one more Big 12 team bowl eligible.
Yep. Yeah, Baylor has been impressive, very impressive. I'm super excited for that matchup. Out of all the kind of mid-tier bowl games that are out there, that's one that I'm really, really excited for, because I like cheering for Baylor. They're a fun team to cheer for in the Big 12, and to watch them turn their season around under Dave Aranda after a really bad start to the year. It looked like Aranda was done, and they dug deep and not only performed well, but performed great the second half of the season. And I'm excited what they can do against LSU.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for bowl picks there. But let's go into the playoff quickly. Let's see here. We have. All right. So here's the bracket for the playoff that we're looking at. First and foremost, what are your thoughts on the bracket and how it played out?
I am excited. I'm super excited. It's controversial. It's got all kinds of matchups that you wouldn't normally expect. I am delighted at a 12-team playoff. This is what I've been dying for 20 years, since ever since I really got into college football. This is what I wanted. The 4-team playoff was just a little taste of it, and it always felt like you were leaving potential champions out of it. I don't know that you've left a real contender for a championship out of the playoff. I'd love to see it at 14 or 16 teams, just because of the upset potential. But you have 12 teams here who can make a run at it, and I'm thrilled with it personally. I can't wait. As a college football fan, this is like kid in a candy store.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see how it plays out. I'm curious to see how many upsets we see. And I'm realizing as I look on the screen down here that Notre Dame's kind of covered up, but that's Notre Dame as the 7 seed with Iowa, or Indiana, sorry. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what kind of upsets there are and how it plays out and just the how it's covered and from week to week. But yeah, you're right. While there are some teams that can complain about being left out. BYU, one of them, I think, have fair cases. There is ultimately, I think, whoever's going to. I don't think there's any true contenders that were left out. I agree with you there. So let's go ahead and take a look at your picks for how it all plays out. So talk us through this real quick.
Yeah. So super excited about Notre Dame. Obviously, I've got them going into the championship game against Oregon. I think they are so strong coming in. I know they're the 7th seed. I love the Indiana Notre Dame matchup. Just the regional matchup there is so cool to see. And really, the right side of that bracket I see is super weak. I really do. I think Georgia is a very weak SEC champion. I don't see them as super strong. I was surprised they beat Texas in the championship game, but Georgia's been streaky. They may not have their starting quarterback. That might be a good thing for them, as he tends to throw to the other team. So I just don't see Georgia as that strong. I'm excited to see Boise State. I love that we got a G5 team with a first round bye. I think that's really cool. But I think Penn State is really going to come to play. I know they get the knock on it that they can't win the big game, and no one in their right mind would ever want to face Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. But um, but I do see Penn State pulling the upset there against Boise State. So that right side to me is kind of straightforward. And I really went chalk in the first round. I don't see upsets until the second round. But to get into the second round, I think Notre Dame beats Georgia. Texas comes in and beats Arizona State. Ohio State, Oregon, I don't like that they matched them up the way they did. That's the one thing I wish they would have seeded a little differently. I know they don't seed for matchups, but
Sure.
I don't know if I love that matchup. Maybe because they didn't play in the Big Ten championship like they were supposed to. We'll see how it goes. I've got Oregon winning that one, and that one is the pick I'm least confident about. I think whoever wins that game goes to the championship for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the complaints is that Penn State, even though they have to play an extra game, kind of has an easier path to the championship than Oregon
Way
does.
easier.
And so, and that's an issue with the automatic buys for the top 4 ranked conference champions. So I think that's something that's going to be revisited. I don't know if we keep that or, whether they add more teams or not, whatever, however that plays out, that might be something that they go back and revisit because it shouldn't disadvantage Oregon. Some people have thrown out the reseeding of the teams after the first round, and I'm not necessarily for that. I kind of like, as long as the seeds make sense, I like watching it play out. And if somebody can come in as a low seed and get an upset, I think they should have the advantage of being able to, then play that bracket, forward.
Mhm.
So
I agree.
uh,
You don't reward the upset in that sense.
right,
Um, and I think you should. If you come in and you're SMU and you beat Penn State, or whatever the upset is, you own that bracket now. That's classic tournament mentality, and I don't think you should take that away from a team. Um, and just because the Big Ten team is disadvantaged in this bracket this year,
yeah.
you can make that argument every year. Even if you reseed, you could say, oh well, this was a really strong. Look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 7 seed. I think they're probably the third, maybe third or second best team in the tournament right now. But that's hard to say.
But that's why, as long as you can iron things out and get the seeds right, then I think then it's not an issue. Then I just prefer watching it, play out without the reseeding. I'm not a fan of that. I think it disadvantages the underdog too much. I think if they're able to pull off the upset, give them that and
Agreed.
play it out. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You're just trying to basically hand it to the top teams. And for me, that's the fun about the playoff is it's especially, in these you see like the NBA or whatever, or baseball, whatever, where you have 7 games. Like it's very rare that the team, maybe some teams go 7 games and it's really close, 2 really good teams, but it's really rare that you're going to get a true upset. Usually the better team is going to come out of one of those series. But when it's a 1-game series, wild things can happen. And that's what's exciting about a bracket. You're not always just because Indiana beats Notre Dame and then beats Georgia, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than both of those teams. Maybe it does, but it just means that they happen to win those games. They were better that day, and that's what matters, and that's what makes this so exciting. Otherwise, again, we just go back to looking at paper, and we can decide it all there, and why even play the game?
Right.
So that's where I'm at. My complaint about this, and I guess we'll go over my bracket, is there's just not a lot of teams I'm excited about to really root for. Because if you look at this, Indiana, like kind of fun underdog team, it's still a Big Ten, and there's 4 Big Ten teams in there. So it's like the Big Ten only has like 4 teams that are good, and they're all in the playoff. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous to me. SMU, while BYU beat them, and it's like kind of helps BYU at that point. It's just like, it's like a moral victory at that point, and it's still SMU who's obnoxious. It's still the ACC. Do I really want to be rooting for SMU? Boise, I can get behind, even though they're BYU's rival, but there's just not a lot. Even ASU, who's the Big 12, and I want to see them go deep. It's like, yeah, but that's ASU. I'm not a big fan of them, and so
Right.
That's my only problem about this. But in terms of my picks, there's no way I'm picking Ohio State, but I do think Oregon is strong, so I'm picking them to come out of there. Don't have a lot of faith in Clemson. I'm just hoping ASU. I just see Scadaboo and see what he does, and just think he's a tough matchup for anybody. And Texas hasn't really played anybody this year outside of Georgia, and they lost twice. And so
That's fair.
I'm hopeful that ASU can win that one. I do think Notre Dame's good. I don't really know what to make of Georgia. They're kind of hot and cold. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to either one of the 7 or 10 seeds there, whoever makes it through.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Mine's mostly chalk. Mine wasn't that creative. So I give you props for having Notre Dame go all the way through. But
my priority is that the SEC loses. I think they're a weak conference this year in comparison to other years. And we talked all season long about the SEC bias in the rankings. But we've also talked about how they've won, like 11 of the past 13 national championships. And so if we're going to eventually stop the bias, we have to start here by knocking them out of the playoff and making the SEC look as weak as I think they are. And so I think the Notre Dame Georgia matchup or the Indiana Georgia matchup is huge. If ASU can pull the upset against Texas, those types of things are huge because it really demonstrates that the SEC has fallen off this year, which I think they have. I could be totally wrong in that, and we could see 3 SEC teams in the semifinals. I mean, but it just, you get tired of the SEC bias in the media. There's obviously a Big Ten bias because there's 4 of those teams in there, and the Big Ten I think is strong this year, not outside of those top 10 or those top 4 teams. But I think their top teams are better than the SEC top teams or the ACC top teams. So um, I think the Big Ten has earned it a little bit more this year, but I would be elated if we can knock out the SEC teams this year, and then in future years you'd have to do it again for that bias eventually to wear off in the media. Because if I'm voting and I keep getting burned if I pick against the SEC 11 out of the last 13 years, well, yeah, you kind of you kind of start voting for them because they keep winning. So I hope it starts this year and we can knock out SEC teams.
Oh, it'd be so good. It'd be so good. So tasty. Okay. So I will say I'm working on another video talking about my ideal format for the playoff. So we can get into that more after I post that up, and we're running long now anyway. But so I do have a lot of thoughts on how I think they can kind of improve the playoff, make it even better. Nonetheless, I'm really excited that it's here to watch it and get involved with it. I just wish I had more teams I could happily root for, but definitely excited to see how this all plays out. So should be good. I mean, like you said, this is what everyone's been asking for so long, and it's finally here. So hopefully it works out. And I mean, even though Alabama wants to blow it up already, you know.
I will be fascinated to see if DeBoer can keep any semblance of prior success in future years. I think you look at the trend when someone takes over for a legend like that, and it just kind of tapers off year over year, and I think that's going to happen. Unfortunately for Alabama fans, fortunately for the rest of college football, I don't think they'll have much of a fight after this, but we'll see. We'll see what happens next year. I'm very pleased that Alabama is not in the playoff this year, and we get a reprieve from the Alabama bias.
I gotta say, after them getting Florida State spot in the playoff last year, and then for them to complain the way they've complained, and then especially their complaint, well, we're not going to schedule hard games anymore. Who have you scheduled? I mean, Wisconsin potentially could have been good, but
maybe
and
weren't they playing like Mercer in like week 11? I mean,
right. No, and then I love their favorite stat of look at our record against bowl eligible teams. Well, how about your record against like not bowl eligible teams? Or no, it wasn't. It was like top 25 teams or something. They just omit somehow.
Yeah, somehow they're 3 losses.
Vandy and OU, and and like you do have some pretty bad losses. So let's talk about those too. All part of it. Anyway, I digress. So perfect. So awesome. Well, basketball season, we're going to continue to cover basketball and get into that, and finish out this bowl season. We'll be back and look at how we did with our picks on our brackets and all of that. So be sure to subscribe so you can catch all of that content. Be sure to like this video if you haven't already. And as always, Adam, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.